Hello and welcome back to An Old Man Watches, and today I'm going to be talking about Brian De Palma's 1983 crime drama Scarface. And the film begins in 1980 when Cuban refugee and ex-convict Tony Montana arrives in Miami, where he is promptly sent to a refugee camp along with his best friend Manny Ray and two other companions. Wherever Tony Montana goes, bloodshed follows, and while in the camp, Tony and his friends murder a former Cuban general. This isn't just pointless violence, however. The killing was performed at the behest of Miami drug lord Frank Lopez, and the price of the job is a green card for each man. Once out of the refugee camp, Tony takes a role in the Lopez organization, where his aggression quickly wins him advancement and a reputation for violence. However, Tony's ambition and independence soon cause friction with his new boss, and he resolves to strike out into business on his own, a decision that obviously his former employer cannot allow to stand unchallenged. As I already said, wherever Tony Montana goes, bloodshed follows. Scarface has a fine cast headed by Al Pacino, who all deliver strong performances, but initial critical response to the film when it came out was largely negative, with it being described as an empty, bullying, overblown B movie. Brian De Palma even picked up a Golden Raspberry nomination for Worst Director, though he avoided the fate of actually winning that award. One of the few high-profile critics to give the film a positive review at the time of its release was Roger Ebert, who praised the sense of individuality and realism that the film gave to its large cast of characters. Now, over the 4 decades since Scarface was released, the weight of critical opinion has very much swung behind Ebert's positive appraisal. The film is now regarded as something as a cult classic, and in 2008, the American Film Institute put it number 10 on their all-time top 10 list of gangster movies. Now, to me, Scarface is an interesting case because it's a film where I can see both points of view. On the one hand, it's got a strong cast, some intensely impactful and memorable scenes, quotable dialogue, you've probably heard some of them, genuine tension, and a nice juxtaposition in how both Tony's flaws and his virtues play into his successes and his failures. There's a lot about it to like. On the other hand, it really is quite crass and crude, and it has some other flaws that I think hold it back just a little. Most of the rest of this video is going to be about those flaws, because at the end of the day, I think those are the things you most need to know about when deciding whether or not to watch it. So, Brian De Palma has never been shy about including violence and profanity in his movies, and Scarface is no exception. In fact, it might be more accurate to say that it takes the violence, and even more so the profanity, to a very 80s level of excess. The F word is dropped over 200 times in the course of the movie, which is comparatively restrained compared to the potty-mouthed Wolf of Wall Street, but it's still quite the torrent of swearing, and it was a key factor in the film's initial negative reception from critics. The 80s excess also extends to the runtime. De Palma's Scarface clocks in at a weighty 170 minutes, which to my mind is probably a good half hour longer than it needs to be, particularly given that the film largely squanders Michelle Pfeiffer by giving her character so little to do. Perhaps that reflects a lack of trust in her ability. She was largely unknown at the time of this film, and apparently both Pacino and De Palma argued against casting her. The director even refused to even give her an audition at one point. But she does well with the material she is given. I just wish she'd been given more. It was something of a breakthrough role for her. So yeah, but it's like 170 minutes and you couldn't find something for her to do? She's the leading female character. So yeah, that's, I think, a little bit of a flaw. Now, Scarface has a lot of great moments. Impactful scenes and quotable snippets of dialogue abound. But I also feel that it's very much a film of moments rather than a cohesive whole. Now, I need to be clear that this structure is not an accidental one. The movie's events are numerous and they happen over a period of multiple years. An episodic, vignette-oriented structure is a deliberate and sensible choice to try and tell that kind of story. Ultimately, in fact, all stories cut out unnecessary details and skip unimportant moments. They have to, or they'd take as long to tell as they took to happen. The key challenge, of course, is to cut down everything that would slow the story down while leaving enough connective tissue that the audience can easily fill in the gaps and feel like they got the full story. And it is here, I think, that Scarface very slightly misfires. While I think it balances things well for much of its first 100 minutes, I found that the connections between scenes and events got quite loose in the final hour or so. It felt like vignettes and scenes, and for my taste lacks just a little bit of cohesion. Everything that's depicted is done well, I should point out, and is interesting and entertaining, but the connective tissues between those scenes is just a little bit on the weak side, at least for my tastes. At the end of the day, De Palma's Scarface is a good film, and its flaws are on the whole fairly minor, but it does have one, to my mind, honking great problem that it just fundamentally isn't able to overcome, which is that it's a remake, and the original is a better film. Now, this is not to say that the original 1932 version of Scarface enjoyed immediate success. In fact, it meant the same sensorial ire as De Palma's movie, though to an even greater degree. It was banned by several cities in the US and states over accusations that it glorified violence and crime. The fact of the matter is, however, that the original Scarface is also an exceptional tour de force piece of filmmaking from one of the leading directors of its era, the exceptionally talented Howard Hawks. It's well written, well shot, well acted, and it's cut to a lean and compelling 90-odd minutes of runtime. It's a film I enjoyed even more than I did this one, and I'm not alone in that appraisal. The 1932 version of Scarface is regarded as one of the most successful and influential of all gangster films. It was added to the National Film Registry in 1994, and in that AFI 2008 list of the top 10 gangster films that I mentioned, the list where this 1983 version appeared at number 10, you can find the 1932 version ranked 4 slots above it, and there's reason for that. It is a better movie. Not that the 1983 version isn't a good film, but the 1932 version is even better. Yeah, so the 1983 offering is it's a good film. If you're into gangster movies, it's worth seeing, even though it's perhaps a little overlong and not quite as cohesive as I would like. But if you are into gangster movies, do yourself a favour and track down the original as well, because it is exceptional. Okay, next time, 1977's Prime Time, a movie so bad that Warner Brothers deemed it unreleasable and sold it to Cannon Films, who would release just about anything. But that's next time. Until then, thanks for watching this video, and I hope you enjoyed it.